YouTube. Okay. Yeah, it says it's. I think it's recording.
All right. You see a little red dot?
I don't see a red dot. But it does give a button for pause and stop recording. So I think it's.
Okay. Oh, yeah. All right. I see it. Right there. There we go.
Oh,
okay. So welcome to the Indianapolis IndyUseR Meetup. My name is Derek Kearney, and as I stated before, I am an employee of our studio, but none of the views that I will be sharing with you today are necessarily our studio's views. They're strictly my own opinions and all of that, etc. So our studio conference this year was held in San Francisco, California, and I had the opportunity to go to a couple of the workshops, or one workshop, and a number of the talks and events. And so today I just wanted to share with you some of the highlights that I found interesting, different talks that I went to and would recommend that other people also view. And then also I have, at the very end, I have a number of talks that I didn't make it to but were on my schedule. And so those are ones that I will be watching over the next few weeks. So if you have questions at any time, feel free to just jump in and ask a question. Very informal here. So just to get started, it's a 4-day conference. I believe the first 2 days were workshops, and then the second 2 days are conference talks. And so I attended a workshop by Zev Ross called Modern Geospatial Data Analysis. And geospatial data, even though I know almost nothing about geospatial data, how to do geospatial stuff, in a previous lifetime/work experience, I had a project where we got the opportunity to learn a little bit about it. And so I try to take every opportunity I get to further that education. So I felt like this was a very well put together workshop. If you ever get to, I think the materials are up on this link at the bottom, but if you ever get to take a workshop by Zev Ross, I would highly recommend it. It was a very, very fun workshop to go to. We learned about reading and writing different types of spatial files, coordinate reference systems, and so I think that's a part of geospatial analysis that has potential to trip up a lot of people, right? Working with vector and raster data file formats, and then also which packages in R people tend to lean on in order to read and write their raster data and their vector data, so the geospatial, do their geospatial work. So highly recommend that workshop if it ever gets offered again. I think that.
Oh, it will.
Okay.
I think. Well, I don't know if I'm 100% certain about this, but I think I might have seen him on the IndyUseR in July.
Oh.
Yeah, I should look that up, but
July of this year.
Yeah, I'm almost positive the IndyUseR in St. Louis
okay.
has him coming back. I'm going to look that up now because let's see.
So while you do that, I'm going to go on to the next one.
Great.
Okay, so the next talk that I thought was particularly remarkable was J.J. Allaire's talk on open source software for data science. So if you're not familiar, J.J. Allaire is the owner of RStudio and kind of the person who started the whole RStudio company. And so he told everybody about the big reveal, which was RStudio is no longer an incorporated company. It is now a public benefit corporation, right? And so if you get a chance to watch this video, I kind of spoiled the ending for you just now, but the rest of the video is very interesting to watch. He goes through the history of the company, a little bit of his own history as a political science major, and how that transformed into writing software and where the company is now. So
I found a bit about in Wisconsin, them printing the data and sending it to Harvard
Yeah,
for reproducing the analysis.
right. That is reproducible analysis, right? So definitely go watch his video to find out more about what it means for our students to become a public benefit corporation. The basics are that there's now a kind of like an in-stone commitment of the company to build software for the community, to build and support open source and open science data analysis. So. All right, did you find out more about the?
There is a spatial workshop, but Zev specifically is not teaching it.
Oh, okay.
It's by Sebastian Rochette and let's see, Doris Scott, and there is let's see, and Jacob Nowosad, I think. Yeah, but not Zev specifically. So
Okay.
I was confusing. I was mixing those up. But there is a spatial workshop in IndyUseR in St. Louis for those of you who are going.
Yeah, so keep an eye out. Yeah, go ahead.
Do they have prices listed?
Prices, not on the main page, but if you go to register, you'll be able to see prices before you commit. And I just registered today actually. The registration portal is open. They've been having some issues, but they're resolved enough to go sign up, I think.
Okay.
Right now.
All right. Thanks.
Excellent. All right. Next talk that I attended was the Deploying End-to-End Data Science with Shiny, Plumber, and Pin. And previous to going to this talk, I had used Shiny and I'd used Plumber before, but I'd never heard of the package Pin. And so I thought that this talk did a good job of kind of introducing to this concept of kind of coming up with a bundle of data and then caching it somewhere so that you can come back to it and use it later. So that somewhere where you would cache that bundle of data may be some kind of cloud service, maybe it's an S3 bucket on Amazon, maybe it's maybe I think they support Google Drive. I think they support
Dropbox?
Yeah, maybe Dropbox. There's a whole like a list of types of kind of short-term places where you may want to send a serialized bundle of your R either functions or data so that you can come back to it, you know, later on, maybe in a calculation or something, and just kind of without having to recombine a bunch of database tables to come up with that bundle of data. So pins is something that I'm going to be trying out. The example that he used was also pretty interesting, the Capital Bike Share API out of Washington, D.C. So he wanted to know, he wanted to be able to build a model that would help predict where bikes would be within the bike share, within the, where they had the different bike share stations. So I feel like the example that he used has a lot of small examples inside of it. So if you get a chance to look at the code, they got Shiny examples, they got Plumber examples, and Pins examples.
What's the benefit of caching your data elsewhere?
So that you don't have to recalculate it, and I think that's the main benefit is like just as a short-term, like let me serialize this, put it somewhere. It's maybe it has to last for 20 minutes, and 20 minutes later I'm going to come back and cache it again. And maybe you're not the only one who wants to use that data. Maybe you want to share that location with other people, and they would always get the most recent version of the data.
Okay. One use case I've had with Shiny apps, especially if you're hosting something publicly on Shiny Apps.io, every time you open that, it spins up a new container for it. So if you wanted to say something and somebody else see it later, you're pretty much out of luck. That's why most stuff up there is just static data. It's not being changed. It's just for presentation. But if you wanted to save a user's input and have somebody else see it another time, you would have to stash it somewhere else. Like Dropbox is what I've used. I haven't used pins yet though. So that would make it a lot easier than trying to do it yourself. But yeah.
I think the decentralization is super important. Data. I developed a workflow tool called Drake, and its biggest weakness is that all your data is by default on disk where you have worked on it, and it's difficult to share all of that entire cache of data. I'm trying to move it to cloud, and I'm glad you brought up pins because I'm going to explore that. The major issue is just offloading the big data so the small cache can maneuver about easily. I'm going to return to that. So thanks for reminding me.
Yeah. Next, I saw a presentation by Heather Nollis and Dr. Jacqueline Nollis from T-Mobile. And I think they did a presentation last year talking about how they were building these pipelines for allowing customers to communicate with T-Mobile. And so they're back this year talking about how they are putting this pipeline into production, what types of problems they were running into with running this R code in production, and how they overcame those problems. Right? So they have a talk called "We're Hitting R a Million Times a Day," so we were able to talk about it. Okay? And inside of that, I thought they brought up some good use cases for a couple of different packages. First of all, being able to test models using the test that package. So test that is a package that's used for unit tests, building unit tests, using logging inside of your code. So if you're building an API, you may want to know what's happening under the hood for that API. So we can add log messages. I think they're using log for R, which is similar to another very popular tool, log4j, which is a Java-based logging tool. They wrote a new package called load test and released that. So that's available on CRAN, I believe. And then they are also using ProfViz in order to figure out where inside of their APIs and their workflow were things slowing down. So if you build a big product and you find that sometimes things are very slow, then you may need to profile different parts of your code to figure out what are the parts of the system that end up being slow. And so the profiler within R that a lot of people talk about is called ProfViz.
Can I interject?
Yeah.
I'd like to challenge ProfViz actually. You can't beat the convenience of ProfViz as far as installation, but I found that for really big stuff and repeated function calls, the flame graphs are difficult to use, and it's not that responsive. I mean, Thomas Peterson has plans to convert the underlying visualization technology to Canvas, but until that happens, it's been over a year, and I finally released the solution that I prefer in its own package. It's just a little wrapper around the pprof tool from Google. And I have hex stickers right here, if anyone wants them.
You are challenged.
It is a formal challenge.
You had thrown down a hex.
Gauntlet thrown.
Right.
So I've been using ProfViz. When I try to use it to profile the stuff I develop, it's been hard to parse out the output. So I've just been using my own scripting to use Google's pprof tool at the very end of that. But because I found the flame graphs are so much better, it condenses all of those calls down into sort of all the samples on sort of the same call nested within a stack. And the standard is amazing, the performance is amazing, the local interactivity, the local server that you can spin up and interact with it in your browser is incredible. And I just decided, well, I'm going to throw a pprof like wrapper around it. And it's on CRAN. It's been swept up into Kirill Muller's profiling our consortium project, actually.
Okay.
So it's it's the number one weakness of Proper is difficulty of installation. We're trying to make that better to install and diagnose because pprof the Google team that works on pprof has been resisting releasing pre-built binaries, and so you have to install Go and set your environment variables correctly in order for it to work. I've done my best to document it. Kira and I are working on making that easier. But once you get going with that, it's flying.
So does that, just a quick diversion, does that allow you to see the R layer? Does it allow you to see the C, like if there's a C or C++ layer, does it allow you to see that too? Or is it, are you mainly focused on the R layer of the code?
So to start, it just focuses on the R layer, but so Kirill is working on, and our consortium project is due pretty soon, so he'll come out with, I'm pretty sure he'll come out with production versions of some of this stuff in the coming months. But he has a package called Joint Prop, which is the easiest thing I've seen to get statistical profiler samples of both the R and the compiled code. And if you visualize, and he has a function in that called commingle pprop, which integrates a bunch of this. Some of this is stuff calls proper actually, some of the development versions, but so we're working on making this stuff easier, but there is a way to, for now, use joint prop to get a sort of pprop protocol buffer file that has all those samples, and then just feed it to proper in this function called serve pprop. That you can just give it a file. You don't need to necessarily give it the R code from the beginning.
Okay. So that's another package that I'm going to have to look into proper to see how that works and give it a shot.
Let me know how you like it.
Yeah. Might see an upcoming presentation on that.
Awesome.
No promises yet.
Well, that's another whole package.
Right. All right. So two things that I want to note about this presentation that I thought can apply across like the work that people do. One, they built a tool in here that was for the stakeholders, right? So their main goal was to build an API or to build a model and then attach an API to it. But they found that the stakeholders wanted a little bit of insight into what was happening with the model. And so they built a Shiny application so that the stakeholders could see what was happening with the Shiny application, why the model would sometimes produce certain values. Right? So I thought that was very interesting. That's kind of like a little bit of insight into how to get the product that you build accepted by other people. You know. And then the second thing is coming up with a definition of done for deploying a model. We always say, oh yeah, there's just one more thing we want to do, right? But if you're trying to deploy something, it's like come up with what it takes to call this thing complete, and then go on to another revision. And I thought that was another important little nugget that they let out in their presentation. Next, I would have to say that this presentation was probably, I feel like it's like almost the most feel-good presentation. It's by a guy named Jeff Leake. He's a professor at Johns Hopkins University in their school, I believe it's the School of Public Health. And he put together this course called Cloud-Based Data Science, where they are using low-cost computers to basically affect change and increase economic mobility for people through education, right? And so I think he previously had some courses on Coursera. He said, hey, it's great that I have these courses, but they aren't reaching the type of people who I would like for them to be able to reach. And so he teamed up with a group in East Baltimore, where the university is at. They put together, it feels like it was very on the fly, like we're going to put together this course to try to get people to learn more about what data science is and how they can use it in their lives to improve their own skill and be able to get jobs. So along the way, they were using RStudio Cloud, which if you're not familiar with RStudio Cloud, it's basically having the RStudio IDE running in your web browser. So that's a service.
And I hear it's great for teaching courses.
I've heard that, yeah.
So that's a service that is also available. So you can find more about this, about the course at cloudbasedatascience.org. Next up is a presentation by James Blair called Practical Plumber Patterns. So Plumber is a library that you can use to build APIs. So let's say you had a model, or you were performing some kind of calculation, and you wanted to expose that and allow other people to maybe send in a couple of parameters. You do some chugging of calculating, and then give them an answer back. You would use something called the library called Plumber to quickly put together an API for that model. And so he kind of goes over different ways of making sure that your Plumber APIs are running well in a production environment. So that includes things like testing, deploying, and being able to scale your APIs. How do you go about debugging your APIs and that kind of thing?
And Plumber is an enterprise-grade API. It's really a great tool.
Yeah, they have this, I've forgotten the name of the kind of the tool that they use. They have a tool that when you build a Plumber API, you get this web page.
Swagger?
Yeah, Swagger.
Yeah.
You get the Swagger kind of, it's kind of like a layer that sits on top that says, it's a definition of what functions your API supports and what parameters each endpoint of the API takes. And they put together a web page that allows you to just kind of call the different API endpoints from the web page. I found very convenient for understanding what endpoints are available and trying out the different endpoints.
Does anybody know what does TikTok do?
Oh yeah, TikTok is a library. This is one that I never used it before, but I learned that TikTok is a library that you can use for timing things.
Oh,
So I suppose you start the timer at the beginning of maybe your function, and then after right before your function's about to exit, you stop the timer, and then you can say, well, how long was that? You know. So.
It's testing if your program running quickly or fast, so exact fraction of second.
Yeah.
If you want to time how slow this is, you put the beginning and the end, and it will print out how long. You might leave during the night. It will give you exactly much time it took to finish the code.
Yeah.
There's a base function that does that, sys-time or system time or something like that.
Hmm.
I'll have to look at the package.
Next was Neil Richardson from Ursa Labs. And so which is kind of like, it's RStudio and Ursa Labs. If you're not familiar with Ursa Labs, it's kind of this company that was put together to support people who are building open source software. And so yeah, go ahead.
and also the key person there is Wes McKinney, who is the author of Pandas.
Right. Right, and so I guess after he went about writing Pandas, sometime after that, he got together with Hadley. They came up with a file format called Feather, which can be used as kind of an interchangeable file format. And now he's working on kind of a follow-up to the Feather implementation, which is called Arrow. It's part of the Apache Arrow project. It's a way of organizing data within memory as columns instead of rows. So they talk about using columnar data, and I think there's going to be a lot of speed-ups if you're reading very large data formats, if you're storing the data as columns as opposed to as rows. So in one of the examples that he showed off in here, he was able to load these Parquet files, 2 billion rows of data, 37 gigabytes, which is way more than you can hold in most desktops or laptops that we have available to us. But was able to scan, load that data up, and then perform searches through the data in under 4 seconds. So the searching of the data took less than 4 seconds to be able to pull out the information he was looking for. So
it's also highly compressed, and I believe it works with dplyr as well.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Yeah.
Works with what?
dplyr.
So that's a project that I'm always interested in learning more about what they're doing. So I thought that this presentation gave a good introduction to what is Ursa Lab and some of the problems that they're trying to tackle. Tina Comier from Indigo, and she talked about using what is it? I guess it was another geospatial community talk, but she did this kind of like impromptu study about why are people, I guess, who is using R for geospatial work? Why are they using R? Why are they not using R? And so in this presentation, she kind of goes through her results of just very non-statistically perfect study that she did of her Twitter followers and whoever else got the note that she was polling for data. But she goes through the surveys that she gave over Twitter and tried to give some reasons that people had come up with for why they are or are not using R for their geospatial work. So but that was very interesting. A couple of packages that she noted, the SF package, the raster package, ggplot, MapView, and then another package that I'd never heard of before the conference, PMap. That was something that also came up in Zev Ross's workshop. And so it's definitely a package that I'm going to have to look into. And I think Zev Ross's material gave some examples of how to use PMap for doing geospatial.
What does it do?
Data. It's a mapping. It has something to do with geospatial. Yeah, creating maps, creating static and interactive maps, I believe.
Okay.
So when they used it in the workshop, it just seems very easy to be able to create your static map, and then like with the one function, you turned it into an interactive map. So.
Okay. So it uses grammar graphics for mapping.
Okay.
What this website does.
All right. Dr. Sadiqa Watson, she gave a talk on neural networks for longitudinal data analysis. So I think this was kind of a side project that she wanted to learn about some machine learning stuff and how to use neural networks. And so she came up with this project for herself and started looking at how to build a neural network that would help predict baseball players, I guess the following seasons for baseball players given previous seasons, right? And so I don't know much about longitudinal data analysis, but I thought the presentation was pretty good. So take a look at that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I listened to that. Well, I watched that presentation, and because I have a friend that was telling me about longitudinal data analysis, and I was, I think that this is a perfect introduction to it.
Yeah, and then so you agreeing with what's your name?
Sorry, Dan.
Dan. Dan mentioned that she was using RNNs, which are recursive neural networks. So, and then she goes about and compares that to results that she got from least squares and gradient boost machines as well. So.
Okay. She might be able to dominate my fantasy baseball league. Just saying.
She did mention possibly quitting her job after being able to come up with this model, so I don't know. Yeah.
Her slides are great.
Yeah, I agree. And then I think this was the last presentation that or maybe second to last presentation I got to see. Reba, I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name, so I'm not going to try to butcher it. But she talked about how she worked on translating the R for Data Science book into Spanish. And the story behind it was actually it was pretty amazing to me, because she had mentioned that the whole thing got started because Hadley Wickham, who was the author of the book, had mentioned that the book was being translated into a number of languages, and curiously enough, the Spanish language was missing. And so she went about working with a group of people to figure out how could they put together the Spanish translation for the book, right? And so I think a very important thing that she mentioned in here was that, and sometimes as a native English speaker, I don't really think about this a lot, is that a lot of programming languages, they're written in English, and all the documentation is written in English. And so if English isn't your first language, and you're interested in learning a programming language, then it can be very challenging to go about reading documentation or reading examples and saying, oh, I don't understand all the context that is given around the example. I can see the example, and I know that if I put the example into my interpreter, it will produce the answer that the example shows it should produce. But how do you actually take the next step and say, how can I manipulate this code to do what I want it to do, you know? And so I thought she laid out the argument for translating stuff into different languages very nicely. So, a couple of things she also noted: using GitHub for text comparison. I thought this was great. Like, I use GitHub all the time, or some kind of source code repository where I can do translation or comparison of old text versus some kind of new text. Do that all the time with my programming languages. But to say, let's use it for making sure that a translation actually occurred properly, you know. Using Slack to coordinate communication, that's something else I also do at work. She talked about holding polls over Slack, because in Spanish there may be different words to represent something in English, right? And it's like, which word does the community kind of go with? So, and then also them coming up with a file format for translating the data sets. I thought that was a very exciting part of the presentation as well.
What kind of format? I'm curious now.
It was basically a file format that it looked kind of similar to a lookup table. So, I think on the fly you can say, okay, I'm looking for this particular word. What word do I need to substitute it for it in my translated version of the data package? So,
okay.
All right, I think I missed. Oh, I didn't miss the talk. Okay, it's in there. All right, so I guess that was all the talks that I saw, save one. I actually did see this panel, career advice for data scientists, down in the lower right corner of the screen. And so I would also recommend that talk if you're looking to become a data scientist or move up in your data scientist role. I thought they gave some good advice there. I guess starting from the upper left corner, sliding windows and calendars. I think there's a lightning talk on this, but I saw the lightning talk and I thought to myself, I need to look into this further, because if you're doing time series data analysis, then this feels like, I don't know, just the way he described it, I was like, yes, it feels very natural to do it the way he was suggesting. Second one on the top, every voice matters, an analysis of We Are Our Ladies. So Our Ladies is very big in our community. And so I think Catherine Simeon was doing an analysis of the tweet from the handle We Are Our Ladies. And so she gives some results about that analysis in her talk. GitHub Actions for R. I've never used Azure Pipelines or GitHub Actions, but that's something new that I'm like kind of in my role. These are the things that I'm interested in, like almost DevOps-y kinds of things. But that's one that I'm going to look into. RN in the lower left-hand corner. If you guys have used the pack rat package for coming up with or for being able to track which packages that you're using in your R analysis and which versions of those packages, then RN is supposed to be like kind of the next generation of pack rat, fixing things that I didn't even know were problems, but apparently are problems that people run into. And so I started using RN for my work, so I want to see what's new with RN.
What's been your experience with using it? I've tried it the last couple of days. I've had issues.
Oh, okay. So I have not had any issues. And in fact, I love the concept, right?
Yeah.
The concept is you get a fresh directory where you're going to install all of your R packages so that when you move on to your next project and it requires a version of a library that is either old or you already have on your computer but may not, maybe you need a newer version of it. It doesn't interrupt your base R's, your base installation of R. It doesn't interfere with the packages that you have installed with your base installation of R. Right. So in the Python world, I use a similar tool. I use PyN, and there's another one that I've forgotten the name of. PipN. I believe it is.
Yeah.
And so
Conda has a flavor of, Conda has one as well.
Oh, you're saying Conda has one as well?
Yeah, you can do environments in Conda.
Okay. And so I love the idea of having these directories that have all the packages I need, and to have this maybe one or two configuration files which list out the package, the exact version, and maybe some hash information to say, like, you actually downloaded the right package that you thought you were going to download, right? And so I feel like from using it in the RStudio IDE, I haven't had a problem. But that is, I think the caveat there is that I don't do a ton of R programming. You know, I don't program a lot of big things in R, and so a lot of the things that I build are smaller examples of how to do something.
Okay.
So,
Hey, Derek. Hey, Derek, if you're interested in learning more about Azure pipelines, Microsoft is doing a series of webinars. You know, that's a deep dive on this particular topic. If you would like, I can share that information with you, and you can sign up for it. I know they did the first of, I think, of 4 or 5 webinars on the topic a couple weeks ago, and I think then another one is tomorrow. So if you want information about that, this webinar is a deep dive on that topic.
okay, yeah, definitely shoot me an email with that information.
Is that like GitHub for Azure? Is that what pipelines is?
Well,
no, it's more than that. It's more than that. It's like a DevOps type of environment.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Circle CI.
Okay.
So it's GitHub, and then plus a lot more features, a lot more DevOps features. You probably can speak on it better than I can, Derek.
Well, so I think the GitHub Actions allow you to kind of coordinate starting up environments, performing tasks inside of these environments. And what I mean by environments are my feeling, I don't know for sure because I haven't watched the presentation, but my feeling is that we're talking something like either a virtual machine or some kind of containerized operating system or application.
Or it can even, from what I saw, it can even be on-prem. I think the DevOps portion of it, and I'm not a developer, so if I say something that doesn't make total sense, excuse me, but from what I've seen in the first webinar, it's more of, you got the GitHub feature where you can commit your code, to GitHub, but then that will initiate an action of deploying the application to production or, so it does other things versus, it does other things and not just the version control that you get from GitHub, but also automate some tasks that you will go through in the deployment process.
Right. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I've seen research on it.
Okay.
Regarding RN, Derek, how are you using it? Do you use it to replace a local centralized package library, or do you set up a new RN project on a sort of a project-by-project basis?
Yeah, on a project-by-project basis. So every time I start working on something different, something new, I will set up a project for it. And so when I say project, because I do all of my R work inside of the RStudio IDE, they have a concept of like I'm pretty sure it's RStudio IDE specific, but not to say that you can't create outside of the IDE, but you can create this new project, and the project file, I don't remember quite what is inside of that project file, but I think it gives like the name of the project you're working on, maybe the directory that's associated with, and I don't know, it feels like there should be some other kind of metadata inside that RProj file.
It's usually global, what you would think of as global options, so text formatting, auto-completion, things like that, those kinds of project-specific options. If we're talking about the .rprog file, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, it has a global cache, and so it does a whole bunch of symlinking, I think. So it's what it's doing. I was having trouble to get it to recognize the global cache. So I'm installing dev tools for 15 minutes to pop every time on.
Well, that's the difference between RM and Packrat, and that's that's one of the most noticeable design features that I've experienced of RN is that it doesn't try to download and compile the entire kitchen sink every time you want to do a new project. And it's been flying ever since I've been using RN for things. But you're running into symlinking issues, you said? Or?
No, it forgets that it installed the package and it keeps on installing things again. It's not hitting the cache. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm doing something wrong, obviously.
Well, it's very sensitive to the directory that you're working in. Also, you have to be sure to start your R session in the top level directory of your project and wait for it to see the project, the lock file and stuff. And but I don't know. I haven't encountered that specific problem you mentioned, but it's new, so I'm sure that the developers would be open to feedback.
Yeah, we're behind a proxy. We don't have access on a lot of the older stuff, so it's kind of locked down.
Yeah, I remember using R from until I switched to Mac as my individual work machine. I was using Windows 7 and trying to install R packages on it, and even Packrat or no Packrat, RM or no RM, I was running into all kinds of proxy issues. It seems like
this is Linux, but yeah, it's behind.
Oh, really? Okay. So it's in some ways more developer friendly, at least.
So Derek, this is a different. I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Derek, is this? I'm thinking this is a different use case than the checkpoint package, correct?
I've never used the checkpoint package.
Okay, because I know the checkpoint is more of a, I believe, time sensitive. So you're saying that, give me the most recent version of this package as of whatever date you pass to the checkpoint package. But this right here, it seems like, you can control what version of the package you want to use, regardless of, of the version of R that you're using, or regardless of some date. Does that make sense?
I wouldn't, I think there are still some restrictions because certain packages may not work with certain versions of R. So I think the RN package says, like, when you're developing this project, or this piece of code, I should say, what R packages are you using? What versions are they? And then that way, and also probably what version of R are you using? And that way, if you come back or if you hand over your project to somebody else, let's say you put your code into a source code repository, and you would like somebody else to go about setting up the code on their own machine, then they can take the kind of these RN metadata files that describe which versions of packages, which packages, and the hash for the package, and they can download that exact same version of the R package that you were using, right? And that way you can make sure that everybody who's working on the code has the version of the R package that the code was originally supposed to work with. And if you decide at a later date that you would like to upgrade the version of a package that you want to use, then you would have to give RN, there's probably some RN command that says, hey, I would like to upgrade the version of this specific package, or maybe all of the packages to whatever the latest is, or maybe you could set the specific package version that you would like to upgrade.
So there is no business of unbundling, so I don't have to carry the packages from your month.
Yeah, I think that's the idea in the end, is that you carry around the RN kind of I call it a metadata file, some kind of like configuration file or something like that. And then people should be able to grab either the version off of CRAN or some kind of repository, some kind of CRAN-like repository is my guess.
There's the lock file, is the configuration file, and you have rn.lock, and it's just a text file that's human readable. It's like it kind of resembles a JSON file in the kind of format that it has, and it's really light. And that's all that gets sent around, and then anybody can just clone the project, and without a package library actually shipped with it, it's really fast. And then you call this restore function in RN that actually downloads and compiles and installs the packages for you, and it's in a local RN folder inside the project.
Provided all the packages are in
CRAN or GitHub, or in a special RN local folder inside the project itself. There is a way to deal with custom local packages, but as long as all the packages that you have installed and that have been recorded and snapshotted into the lock file are in some online repository that's accessible from whoever else is going to use it, then you'll be fine. You can do local packages too, but it just requires a lot of care. It requires that you bundle up those binaries yourself tar.gz archives of the source, and put that into rn/local inside your specific project and ship those along with it.
I think it also discovers from your scripts what packages you're using, so you don't have to sit there and look for them. It just auto discovers it for you.
Yeah, to initialize a project, that's super helpful.
Yes.
Now, I think the last talk that I suggest people see is this 3D ggplot with ray shader. This guy, Dr. Tyler Morgan Wall, I feel like one, he's very skilled, but he has the great opportunity to show off things that look really great. Just to take a step back, whenever I'm writing code, I'm always like, okay, what do you show off from your code? Like, you can show code, but a lot of people, like, their eyes glaze over. It's kind of like when you see, well, when I see math equations in a presentation, it's like my eyes are like, oh, great, another summation kind of thing. But when you see a picture, you know, if you can show a picture of what you're doing, then people are like, oh, I understand that, you know. And so he not only shows pictures, he like builds 3D models. He can take his models and print them off in 3D printers and then pass them around the crowd, right? And so he has great high quality rendered maps. You know? So I always like watching his presentations. I think he has a great presentation style, very personable. So
I don't know if he's the one, but I saw something once where somebody had like a 3D type thing of a mountain or something, and they had like the sun or the moon go around it.
Yeah.
And as it did it, you would get the light. Was that
yeah.
Yeah. Like you said, it's kind of jaw dropping.
I was there on this dock.
Oh.
You know, I was sitting right in front of the screen. I couldn't see the plot spin for a while. I was getting a little dizzy.
That is one of the things he mentions. He's like, there's a couple of things you'll probably get from the presentation, and one of them is that he really likes spinning plots around, you know. So all right. So I think that's all the talks that I went to. Let's see, what's next? Oh, one of the evening events was at the California Academy of Sciences, and if you ever get the chance to go there, that was an amazing place. They do research on I think all kinds of stuff. I don't exactly know what, but they have this great almost like this rainforest environment inside of their building, and you could go around and see a bunch of different insects and animals that they had in there. So a very interesting and fun experience.
Yeah, they have the entire rainforest in a column.
Yeah.
Right, in a glass column that you could use the stairs to walk around.
Yeah.
And see butterflies and different, I don't know how many other species there were.
Yeah, I mean, they had fish, they had reptiles, they had like big fish, small fish, they had starfish, like all kinds of stuff. Yeah. You were walking underneath stuff, like you didn't even know that, like, oh, above you is like the fish bigger than you are, and so when you're at the top, you're kind of looking down, and you're like, do those people know that there's like this really big fish on top of them right now? And then I think the last thing I ended up doing was this Tidyverse Dev Day. So I think this might have been the third one. The third or fourth one that they've done. So basically, it's everybody from the Tidyverse team gets together, and I think they usually have a bunch of tickets that go on sale. You have to watch the Tidyverse blog if you're interested in doing this, but they'll put the tickets up on Eventbrite. It's like $5 or $10, a very nominal fee that they donate to a charity afterwards, and they get together in a space, and they work on helping people become Tidyverse contributors, writing code, writing R code, just helping out with the whole effort for the Tidyverse. So I got in there. I'm proud to say that I had my first commit to the Tidyverse. I helped out with the with R package. I wrote an example. So yeah, it's very easy to do. Apparently. So
usually for something like this, do they expect certain level of experience with software development?
Yeah, there's no level of experience needed because I would say I'm experienced in other languages, not so much in R, right? So what they do is they have, I think they have one corner of the room that they say, if you've never done like a commit to a source code repository, or if you've never checked out code from a source code repository, then come sit with us for a minute. We're going to show you how this thing works. And so after that, you'll go on the wall. They have sticky notes all over the walls saying these are issues that we flagged as kind of like beginner issues. And so you can pick one off the wall, you read what it says, you go onto the source code repository to figure out like what is being asked for that particular issue. A lot of them are documentation or write up an example that shows this, or maybe help fix a bug that somebody has written up an issue for. And you basically try to fix it, and you use people around you to, it's a big community thing. If you don't understand how to do something, you ask your neighbor. And you have people who are very experienced in R also walking around, and you just raise your hand and say, hey, can you explain like what's going on here? So that's what I had to do. Like I've never used the with R package before, and so I asked somebody, I was like, in what case would you want to use this? Like, why would you want to use this thing? And so somebody sat down with me and said, oh, well, this is why you want to use it, and this is how they showed me how they had used it, that function in the past. And I said, oh, I understand that. Like, that's something that I've done in the past with another programming language. And so then I just wrote up an example. I wrote like the very little R that I could remember. I wrote it down. I said, okay, now how do I do this with R? And you know, end of the day, a couple hours later, I had an example that I could submit. So yeah, it's I think the whole idea behind the day is to say to get you from what I always call the 0 to 1. Like you started at 0, not knowing anything about this, and now you're surrounded by a group of people who may either be in a similar situation or who have a lot of experience with doing this kind of thing. And they're there to help you, to encourage you, to work with you in order to get to your one point, which is you've actually done something, you know. So I think it's a great place to, a great opportunity to start learning how to contribute to open source code, how to write R and that kind of stuff.
Does it happen closer to the conference?
Yeah, it's usually, I think I've only seen it happen in association with conferences. So, so I saw RCO conference last year. They had, I think that was the first Tidyverse Dev Day, and then at the UseR conference this past year they had what I think is the second one, and then this is probably the third one. So, and my guess is that they will also have one at UseR this year as well. So it usually happens the day after, at least with the RCO conferences, it's happened like after the last day of the conference. Then there's this additional tag-on day. You have to sign up because they usually get a space, and the space only has, you know, for safety code reasons, it only has so much room for people, and so that's why they put up the sign-up sheet. They put up like an Eventbrite event. You sign up before the spaces run out, and then you meet at the place. They have breakfast and like lunch for you there. So definitely, I always have to. I always feel like I remember it last minute. So I think this time it might have been like November, and I was like, oh, I better look at the blog to see like did they post like that they're going to be doing this again, and they had already posted it and stuff. Luckily, there was a space open. All right, so I'll leave you guys with a couple of links. There's the conference website resources have been posted, so you can watch all these videos up on the RStudio.com website. They have the RStudio.com 2020 drop down in the resources.rstudio.com website. And then there's a GitHub repository that has a bunch of presentations inside of it. And then my own slides there's a link at the bottom, and you can, that link has links to all of the slides that we talked about today, and also a link to the slides that you're seeing now.
And we'll also put link to Derek's slide in the IndyUseR GitHub.
Yeah. So we'll update the web page for past presentations for our group as well.
Derek, I don't know if you discussed this, but there were 2-day workshops before all the talks. And
Yeah.
we also have all of that content is out there for free. So
Yeah.
you can basically, there's 20-some workshops you can at your own pace go through.
Mm-hmm.
So are there video recordings of the workshop or just the code? Or both?
I think it's just the code
Yeah, I think, just
for the workshops.
Yeah. So I know a number of other people had an opportunity to go to the conference. Was there, did anybody else want to chime in with their experiences?
I went to the workshop and the conference day.
Okay.
I took Robert Wynn's time series forecasting class. That was the biggest value add for me. I learned that forecast package is being retired.
Did he go over the new Fable package?
Yes. Sybil, Fable, and C.
Okay.
Those are the 3 packages he covered. So the first day was more of visualization and how Sybil kind of makes it easy to visualize data every which way, just like the forecast package did, but it's got a little more bells and whistles. The big wow for me on the first day was from the Beast package, which basically gives you features in time series, like, autocorrelation 1, trend power, there's another. It's akin to R squared if I look at the map. So they have trend power, seasonality power, and various other things that you can make. And if you have like more than a handful of time series and you want to characterize each of the time series, you could, let's say if you have, I'm drawing an air right now, sorry folks on the phone. So if you have time series like this and you have several overlaying on top of each other, you could collapse the entire time series into one or few metrics, like the trend power or seasonality power. And then analyze those metrics to see if one time series is different than the other. So that was like a big wow for me. I thought of time series in that way. The second day was focused on the modeling. Again, the big wow for me was I could try, tell R to model several different models at the same time. Like, the Sybil pipe into a model and say, make a random walk EPS, ARIMA, you name it, right? Hierarchical, you can, if you have data set up that way. Right? And then it will spit out the model metrics for all. Right? And the other thing was, if I did have time series cross validations or set up as test and twin, the model is intelligent. The Fable package is intelligent enough to decipher which is training set, which is test set, and spits out the model metrics for the model performance. That was a big wow for me. He did cover the hybrid models like Fourier with LM models. And, you could mix and match as something as simple as linear model with Fourier series to kind of tease out several different patterns. What he did not cover, and I wish he did, was the T-BAS model. He had it in his material in a way, but he didn't talk about any of the T-BAS. But when I approached him with this question, he said, hey, the Fourier series in conjunction with other models should give you what you need. That'll be akin to T-BAS. those are the highlights of the from the workshop. From a conference day, again, I'm a big fan of Maxroom. I like the Tidy Tune package. I have not used any of the parsnip packages earlier. I'm still old school, using Carrot. Maybe I should push myself to use the parsnip more. But he has made some packages called Dial Tune to help with easy formatting of grid searches and how you can go about. I think better use of per and map for grid search and tuning. Feels to me that the package talks well with Broom, so nicer output that you can go do something with. That's a highlight. I didn't come prepared with all the thoughts, but those were the biggest things that stand apart from what you
Okay. Anyone on the phone have experiences that they want to share?
I think Stephen had to sign off.
Okay. All right.
And did you say you went to the?
Yes, I was there. So I took the deep learning with R and Keras and TensorFlow 2-day training with Bradley Bumke from Cincinnati area. It was good. It felt like kind of a fire hose of information. Like he had some really great tutorials to go through, and it was like bam, 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 bam. So it felt like kind of a topic that maybe you need to let sit a while and kind of struggle with on your own. But you get a lot of good tips and tricks that may not have made it into the all the content, but so in person he was telling us like hyperparameter tuning, best ways to do this, this and that. It kind of came down to like a lot of trial and error experience and GPUs basically.
Okay.
So it was a good class.
Would you say it'd be good for somebody who's a beginner, like just trying to figure out like what is like machine learning, what is deep learning, that kind of thing, or? So
in his introduction, he kind of says like you might want to know like these kind of things. So if you're familiar with the machine learning in general, you'll be okay.
Okay.
Because I'm not a deep learning expert by any means, so it was kind of an introduction of the deep learning methods.
What was his name again?
Bradley Bumke, and I'm probably not saying it correctly. So he covered like convolutional neural nets. So it was mostly like classification problems. CNNs for images, RNNs with LSTMs, and then he covered a little bit of like transformers like the BERT for natural language processing, word embeddings, and how to use that.
Yeah, I felt the same way last time when I took deep learning workshop.
Okay.
I can't recall the instructor's name off my head. This time it was a different instructor, but the TA is the same. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, they had written like a lot of books, so they're very knowledgeable.
Yeah.
I forget their names right now.
Yeah. I went in cold last year, with very little knowledge about deep learning. I had a chance to do it over again. I would first read up on deep learning, then go. So, yeah.
Yeah.
The best workshop I've attended on deep learning is by an academic named Leon Jessen. And he gave an amazing workshop at R Pharma. All the materials are on his GitHub repo, and he stays really basic. One of the first things he goes over is a deep neural net that he implemented himself with just 100 lines of R code, really low dimensionality, really basic. And then he goes into some really simple examples and gives us some simple models. And he introduces us to this TensorFlow tool where you can actually visualize what each of the neurons are doing. You can visualize the effect of tuning a neural net with 2 nodes, 4 nodes, a small handful of layers without scaling up really quickly, sort of opening up the black box. And then he sets us up with a problem we can actually solve where this model is broken. and he has us fix it. And the solution is quite satisfying and reinforces the concept of what different activation functions are supposed to actually mean. And I took it and I felt like, oh, deep learning isn't this mysterious thing that you just kind of have to use like magic. No, it's something that is actually very simple. It rests on really simple linear algebra, and anyone can do it. Even I can do it. So that's just kind of like the feeling that I left his workshop with. I don't know when and where he'll be giving it next, but certainly
What was his name?
Leon Jessen.
Justin.
Yeah, Jessen. And on his GitHub repo, there's an rpharma 2019 repo, and all his materials are there.
Yeah, right. That's how I learned deep learning since the workshop.
Yeah.
I went to Dr. and the professor, Anila Moran. She taught us with just, bare bones, NumPy, code. No use of TensorFlow or Keras and all that. And because Pam worked the background and gave me confidence.
Yeah, it does. It does. To really get your hands on it and then know what you're doing when you're applying these models, these layers.
Yeah. And TensorFlow is super useful.
Yeah.
The reason I did that.
I did feel like the R packages, because lots of times stuff is written in Python and maybe you lose some functionality when it's ported over R, but it seemed like, all the stuff in TensorFlow and Keras was there, for the R users.
Yeah, the other resource I have found good for deep learning now, it's not an R-based resource, it's the website thought.ai, Jeremy Howard, he teaches a course on deep learning. And I think they have written like a Python module, fast AI around the package, which is backend of Python. But I think the thing I like in this course, and again, I probably looked up the older version of the course, I haven't kept up with the recent version, but starts with even things like how do you set up a GPU in cloud, so it gets you also set up with trying to run stuff, and I think the approach there is first top down, like everything is kind of packaged backend, but then over the course you'll go into details. So I think this approach is also starting from scratch and then building. He first shows the end product, what you could do, fit models, and then towards the end of the course he starts going down to the basics of how you do it. So that's another really good research.
Yeah, their approach is their first chapter is deep learning for coders, pretty much their first section, and the idea is that to get you out and running as fast as possible, to leverage the programming knowledge, maybe in Python that you might already have, and to get started that way, and only later do they introduce the methodology, and that's by design. They want to get people using state-of-the-art models before necessarily they know how to build them themselves. They're thinking, well, they want to empower people hands-on as early as possible. Does anyone know the state of R bindings for PyTorch? Because when I asked that question to Sigrid and Kevin and other folks at our studio who are working on these things, they said it wasn't part of their plan, but there is some rumor going around that somebody was developing R bindings to PyTorch. I haven't kept up with that though.
I think somebody once said, now I don't remember who, that second hand or third hand, that like PyTorch is too Pythonic and makes it a little difficult to put R bindings. I mean, TensorFlow, even though it's in Python, it's still underlying its own domain-specific language in some sense. Whereas PyTorch, when you're developing models in PyTorch, you'll actually write Python classes and stuff like that. I don't know.
That was Sigrid's answer in 2019 this time.
Oh, maybe it was you who said that, yeah.
Yeah, that was her answer a year ago, and it makes a lot of good sense. I just haven't kept up with it since.
So I think one option is now something like a fast AI package is sits on top of PyTorch. I think that probably could be interfaced easier with like an Exponent or something, because there, some of the wrapper functions are already built, so you could just call it from R.
Thank you, everybody.
All right.
Feel free to stick around, talk more. But if you're ready to go, you're free to go.
Any pizza?
Thank you, Derek. Take a pizza. It looks like we barely scratched the surface.
I will stop the recording. I'll also upload the video somewhere.
Okay.
And yeah, I think we are caught on camera to this time.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can always meet here. The meeting might take me to St. Vincent.